Chapter 1. The Little One Nobody Wanted. The wind howled across the barren prairie, kicking up dust in brown waves that stung the eyes and choked the lungs. Dustville, true to its name, was a place where dreams dried up quicker than a rain puddle in July. Mara Quince stood outside the rickety saloon, no more than 5 feet tall and barely 100 pounds soaking wet. She clutched a satchel close to her chest, her eyes rimmed with the quiet ache of 100 rejections. Her dress, once blue, had faded to a tired gray. She had come west for a husband, for freedom, for something that would give her a name beyond the little one. Instead, they laughed. Too small to plow, too thin to hold up a roof, the ranchers had said. She'd blow away in a sandstorm before breakfast. Even the churchwomen, with their kind eyes and sharper tongues, had taken her in with pity, not purpose. They fed her biscuits in prayer, but no place to belong. She was alone. Chapter 2. He rode in like a storm. The town froze when the rider came, taller than any man Dustville had seen, and broad as the double doors of the barn. The Comanche rode a black horse that barely contained him. His dark hair was bound in leather, his face worn like carved stone. Tattoos laced his arms like whispers from another world. They called him Tama One-Eye, a name that whispered through saloons and under children's beds like legend. The Elgufus preferred. He dismounted in silence, his single eye scanning the town. Some claimed he had once led a renegade tribe, others said he'd been a bounty hunter turned outlaw. What they all agreed on was that Tama One-Eye had killed, survived, and lived alone far too long. Mara stood still on the wooden planks outside the saloon. Their eyes met, hers full of questions, his full of dust and storm. He nodded. She didn't know it yet, but that moment stitched their souls together, like patchwork in a world that kept coming undone. Chapter 3. The Unspoken Pact. No one saw them speak, but the next day he was hammering nails into wood outside the edge of town. A cabin for her, the townsfolk whispered. Some feared, some scoffed, but none dared intervene. Tama worked from dawn until moonlight, shirt off, sweat mixing with the scent of cedar and grit. Mara brought him water, and slowly, more than water. Bread, a blanket. One day she stitched a bandage over his shoulder where an old scar had reopened. "You don't talk much," she said once, tying the cloth. He looked at her, eye steady. "Don't need words. You're too small for lies." Mara blinked. No one had ever said her size made her more true. That night she cried quietly, not from sorrow, but because someone had finally seen her. Chapter 4. Embers in the Dust. Days passed into weeks. The cabin stood proudly at the edge of the prairie, a sturdy place of warmth and silence. Tama slept outside under the stars, always with his rifle, always with his back to hers. But danger always rode the same roads as peace. A gang of horse thieves, led by a white outlaw named Granger Flint, came tearing into Dustville one dry morning. They took what they pleased, whiskey, women, horses, and spat in the sheriff's face. When they came for Mara, she didn't scream. She only stepped back inside the cabin, standing with a skillet in hand. "Hill's mine," Tama said, appearing out of nowhere. Granger, thick-chested and cocky, spat tobacco on the ground. "She yours, redskin?" "Shame mine," Tama replied, low and final. Gunfire erupted. 3 men lay dead before the sheriff got his pants on. Tama took a bullet to the thigh and didn't fall. Mara, her hands shaking, knelt beside him in the dirt and held the wound closed with both palms. "Don't you dare die," she whispered. "You just built me a home." He didn't die. Chapter 5. Of Wounds and Waking. He healed slowly, cursing the white doctor in his clumsy hands. Mara cleaned his wound every day, her small finger steady and sure. "You've seen war," she said once as she brushed his long hair away from his forehead. He nodded. "Too much. Lost a wife once. White men burned our village, took my eye, buried her by the river." She didn't ask more. She only held his hand until he slept. And somewhere between the stitching and the silence, between her stories of the life she wanted and his silence about the life he'd lost, they built something else. Love didn't come like thunder. It came like breath, like firewood stacked just right, quiet, warm, alive. Chapter 6. The dust stirs again. They were happy. Tama began to carve her a rocking chair from pine. Mara planted daisies along the window ledge. The townsfolk, though slow to admit it, began nodding to Tama in passing. Children dared to wave. Peace, like a rare flower, had begun to bloom. But peace, in the West, never lasted. Granger Flint didn't die in that first shootout. Word came he'd joined up with raiders. They were headed back to Dustville, 10 men, fast horses, hate in their saddlebags. This time he wasn't just looking for plunder. He wanted revenge. Chapter 7. The Cabin Holds. When the dust cloud rolled in, Tama was ready. He stood at the edge of the prairie, rifle in hand, war paint on his face. Mara stood behind him, not begging him to stop, but holding a pistol she barely knew how to fire. "Don't leave me again," she whispered. "Never," he replied. The fight was brutal. Mara took out one man herself, trembling as he fell. Tama, like a mountain on fire, moved through the raiders with terrifying grace. But he fell too. One blow to the ribs, another to his arm. Blood soaked the earth. Then Mara screamed. Loud, the scream of a woman who would not lose again. And behind that scream came the townspeople. The sheriff, the preacher, even the schoolmaster. For Tama, the raiders fled. Some dead, some broken. Granger was hanged the next dawn. And the town, finally, had changed. Chapter 8. Home. Spring came early that year. The cabin stood stronger than ever. The rocking chair waited by the door. A small garden bloomed, and under the soil where no one could see was the blood that had bought peace. Mara and Tama married under the cottonwood tree, his hand around hers, her head reaching just under his chin. She wore a wildflower crown. He wore a smile few had ever seen. That night, as stars scattered like silver across the sky, Mara sat in her rocking chair and listened to Tama carve another piece of wood by the fire. "What are you making?" she asked. "A cradle," he said. She cried again, not from sorrow, from joy.